Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my review of This Is the Police. A little bit out of season, but I'm a big fan of this game. I've covered it back in the day on the channel. This seems like as good a time as any to review it. When did it come out? 2016, so yeah, she's getting on there. And it had a sequel and also a spin-off game called Rebel Cops, but we'll talk about all of that. But the main reason that we're doing this is that the developer, Weappy, they've been like radio silent for 5 years. They've just announced that they've got a new game coming, and I think it's coming next year. Hollywood Animal seems to be taking the same sort of visual stylings that you can see, the very distinct cut-out art. I don't know what else to call it, but it's distinct and it's wonderful. So from what I understand, it's a totally different game. It's not anything to do with This Is the Police, not a sequel, because This Is the Police is set in the 80s, and I think Hollywood Animal, the idea is that you're like a producer running a movie studio in the 20s, which I would love to see come out of this studio. So anyway, that's why we're here. That's why we're looking at this game. Scarlett, is it any good? Yes, it's worth your time, it's worth your money. Should probably get that out of the way. For those that missed it, that's the only real objective anything that I do, because I'm in denial that I'm not a reviewer. I don't care about writing essays or any of that sort of crap, but I do say that if I give you $5, then you give me an hour of gameplay. I don't think that's unreasonable. So This Is Police, in current day, retails at $21.50 Australian, which we'll call 4.5 hours. So I've just put my hours in and, I'm happy to report that it still holds up. It's still wonderful. You'll get your value out of that and more. Even in that time that I've spent there, the game is a bit of a slow burn. There is a narrative hook to it. There are many, many more hours left as well. So it's absolutely worth picking up. But buyer beware, even though I am quite smitten with this game and I have my biases, this is not going to be for everyone. So the game has two big moving parts to it. One being that it has an overarching narrative following Captain Boyd, or Chief Boyd, I suppose you would call him. He's a soon-to-be retired police chief, and it's very complex, and it's kind of cool seeing a more adult cast of characters instead of all these bloody 20-year-old furry voice actors. Most of this cast are in their 60s and they are brilliant, and the sparring and the back and forth, the dialogue, it's just so good hearing this. But yeah, very much in a rivalry with the mayor. The mayor's corrupt, he wants to get his mates in, he wants you gone, and you're sort of given a deadline of 6 months to get your affairs in order, behave while the mayor moves his fucking cogs in the background, and then you'll be on your way. And so that's the idea broadly, and I don't necessarily want to get into it, but the mafia get involved, and you have to walk this line between solving everyday crimes, which is the gameplay loop we'll come to, and figuring out how much of your morality you're going to try and hold to. He seems quite proud that he's one of the only police chiefs ever that people really, really like, but through a cause of narrative events that happens early, you do find yourself kind of in bed with the mafia. Again, I'm being vague. I hate that reviews say they don't spoil things, and yet they go on to tell you too much about even the narrative setup. What you need to know is that it is a really interesting story. It's grim, and I find it makes the main character relatable, because even though he's heading into that sort of retirement age, I give less fucks, there are still stakes. There are still reasons for him to want to preserve the status quo, or even want to massage his moral misgivings, right? So it pulls you in different directions, as opposed to a lot of the one-dimensional writing that we get fed these days. Good guys good, bad guys bad. It's more, here's a dude trying to make the best of the situation that he can, but at the end of the day, these are the waters that you swim in, so you have to roll with those punches. The gameplay loop itself is unusual, but kind of cathartic. You run a police station in a fixed camera. Most of the camera shot you'll see is just looking at a model of the city, and that's cool because you can see the residential area. You've got sort of ghetto slums area. You've got the CBD. It's actually really kind of cool. You also, you do get like sort of weather effects and rain because of the window behind the camera. I don't know how else to describe it. It has a view of the outside weather going on as well. So they've actually come up with some clever ways to have what is essentially like a static shot of a model, but then have it have some more dynamic components to it, a la weather. You've got your little police cars moving around. I'm using my hands. You can see them moving around, driving to and fro, and the distance they have to travel seems to affect things. But ultimately, you're running dispatch, and you have your roster of dudes on an A-B flip shift. So you've got 1 day on, 1 day off sort of thing. And ultimately, you are just dispatching dudes to deal with crimes that get called in. There's all sorts of wild, horrendous stuff, but there's plenty of memes and funny stuff in there as well. But it can all just turn like that in a second, and before you know it, you've got officers dead in a bad decision at a shootout, or because you sent rookies or whatever. They all have like a professionalism score that goes up and down as they solve crimes or shit the bed. So you might be getting called out to like a false alarm, and you accidentally send your A-team, and then you go and send some B-grade bloody numpties off, and they get, jumped in a shootout, and they all end up dead. There is a political component on top of it, and, at the very base level, you petition your betters for increase in roster or more earnings and that sort of stuff. And the only way that that's going to fly is if you play ball. Now, part of that is obviously responding to crime scenes and resolving them and trying to keep civilian deaths down and all that sort of stuff. But you're also going to get politically motivated directions from your higher-ups because of whatever they're doing, that you can choose to comply or, tell them to bloody kick rocks at your own doom. An example being in the early stages, I wasn't quite on the same page as what City Hall was telling me what to do. And then when it came around, not only were they rejecting my requests for expanding my roster, they started downsizing and taking funding off me. And after that happened a few weeks in a row, I thought, all right, I guess I better play politics. And look, you don't have to like it, but that's kind of realistic. That's how it is. We all have betters, and we all have to dance for their tune. Anyway, yeah, look, the narrative's really interesting without giving too much away. And, you have veteran voice actors really getting into that sort of crime, family, police grit. And it appeals to me a lot. And then it's balanced out with a gameplay loop that I find satisfying, but I think some people may have issues with. An example being, let me think. Don't get me wrong, I love Victoria 3 recently, or even, Factorio, these games where it's spreadsheets of information and you can fine tune and, there's almost a scientific component to it. You can usually get to the bottom of the zeros and ones that make it move. That's not how this works. A lot of the info is obfuscated. It'll give you broad strokes ideas like an officer with a professional level of 150 is considered average, right? But what does that mean? Well, who knows? You need to trial and error and interpret it as best you can. Come up with some sort of, maybe I send a rookie out with a jet cop, or do I send 8 dudes to this crime scene, but then I'm potentially short-staffed, and then when City Hall calls up just out of the blue saying they need me to suppress a riot, I have to refuse because I'm understaffed? Or do you start overstaffing and having both your rosters come in every single day, and then they start getting drunk and crashing and dying on the way to work? Like, there are all these moving parts, but the game intentionally obfuscates it, which is to its strength, which is the way it should be. But know that going in, that if there are some people, for whatever reason, that will just go, nah, not having it. If I can't see the numbers, if I can't min-max it, then I don't want to play it. I wouldn't even call that a negative or a downside, but it is one of those buyer beware sort of things going into it. Honestly, then it just makes for a really fun plate spinning managerial kind of game. You're just trying to plug all the different holes, and you never really know if it's going to 100% go your way or if things are going to go sideways, but then that creates more problems that you need to resolve. Anyway, I don't want to waffle. It's really cool. It's really unique, and I very, very much suggest picking it up. I haven't actually played the sequel. It's been sitting in my library for years, but in the sequel, they introduce like a turn-based combat component. And from what I understand, the game is just as great as this one. And the spin-off Rebel Cops, I really enjoyed as well. And that takes that gameplay mechanic, the turn-based combat, and turns that pretty much into a whole game. So it's weird, like it doesn't have a lot to do with this game. This is Police, not mechanically and narratively. It's just the same dudes with the same art style, and that's about it. But the bridging gap is the game in between. This is the Police 2. which is sort of a 50-50 split of the two different games. Anyway, brilliant game. I can't wait to get back to it, but I will stop waffling. Highly recommended for the money and for the time investment. Team, I might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.